Appeal to Israel to allow more aid into Gaza. Speaking during a news conference with the Qatari Prime Minister, Antony Blinken described the humanitarian situation in the enclave as unacceptable.
Israel has to maximize every possible means, every possible method of getting assistance to people who need it. The United States will continue to strongly support those efforts, along with many other countries around the world. But it requires more crossings, it requires more aid getting in, and once that aid is in, it requires making sure it can get to the people who need it. So we will continue to press that every single day because the situation as it stands is simply unacceptable.
We want to see an end of the humanitarian suffering. We want to see the hostages back with their families. And hopefully today will present us an opportunity to discuss further in details about the development on that front and on the bigger picture, and of course ultimately hoping to reach a just solution for the Palestinian people also to get their own state at the end of the day.
Well, Mohammed Al-Qassim joins us now live from occupied East Jerusalem. Mohammed, we heard President Biden saying that he wants a ceasefire. What do you know about the efforts there for a ceasefire?
That's correct, Maria. We heard also President Joe Biden last week on February 26 making a bold statement that on March 4th, Monday, we'll have a deal in the tank. That didn't happen. Now the White House is trying again, saying that it's in Hamas's court to sign a deal, and he's giving Hamas a couple of more days. The second day of talks in Cairo, Egypt, concluded without any breakthrough in these talks. Still, the major issues, like Nizar told us from Gaza, Hamas still steadfast in in the main issues, like with full withdrawal of Israeli forces and a complete ceasefire, something that Israel doesn't want or agree to. Israel is saying that it will agree to a 6 weeks temporary truce, and then they'll decide whether to continue for another 6 weeks, or that will be it, and then it will proceed in its plans for the invasion of Rafah. Israel is also demanding not only the release of 40 hostages, those are mainly, it says, women, sick, elderly, but also they are demanding a list of all the Israeli captives that who are alive in the Gaza Strip, and that's something that Hamas said it won't do, and it will not provide the list until a deal is signed. Israel is not going to withdraw its forces outside the coastal enclave. Instead, it said that it will withdraw its forces outside densely populated areas, and it will allow for more humanitarian to get in, as well as more Palestinians to be allowed to the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Israel has not sent a delegation to Cairo in the first couple of days of the talks. Now the talks have been extended for a third day, and it doesn't look like Israel will send a delegation unless it gets news from the mediators, the Egyptians, the Qataris, or even the U.S., that a deal may be taking place, that Hamas showed enough flexibility and they can maybe sign a deal, and then Prime Minister Netanyahu may agree to send a delegation. But at this time, it doesn't look like a delegation from Israel will be traveling to Cairo, because they don't believe, according to Israeli officials, that a deal is imminent. Maria?
That's not good news at all, is it, Mohammed? Talk to us about warnings by the Israeli Defense Minister about an explosion there happening in the West Bank if Israel does impose strict restrictions over Ramadan.
The far-right National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, part of the coalition government, wants tough restrictions imposed during the holy month of Ramadan on Muslim worshippers entering into Al-Aqsa compound. Anyone less than 60 years of age, he doesn't want to see enter into the Al-Aqsa compound. It sounded that Prime Minister Netanyahu was going to side with him, but he made a decision yesterday during a cabinet meeting saying that Israel will not impose for the time being any restrictions during the holy month of Ramadan. Things will be similar to what we have seen in the last few years. No restrictions on any Palestinian citizens of Israel to get into the Old City and to Al-Aqsa compound. Same is for the Palestinians in occupied East Jerusalem. No one knows if Israel will issue permits for Palestinians in the occupied West Bank to be able to come and pray during Ramadan in the Holy City. Now, we have seen an increased escalation, Maria, since October 7th. Even the occupied West Bank has been boiling for quite some time. Last year was one of the deadliest in more than 2 decades. And since October 7th, we've seen more than 415 Palestinians get killed and more than 4,500 wounded. Add to that more than 7,000 Palestinians detained. Yesterday, we've seen one Palestinian, 16 years old, shot and killed near south of Nablus in the occupied West Bank by Israeli forces, alleging that he attempted a stabbing attack. This all goes to show you how sensitive the situation is, and the fear that by the Israeli defense minister that if Israel imposes restrictions during the holy month of Ramadan on Muslim worshippers into Al-Aqsa compound, then the city will explode. The Muslims and Palestinians in occupied West Bank and occupied East Jerusalem will not sit still. Even Palestinian citizens of Israel will not stand for not being allowed to enter into the holy city. Now, the Israeli government and Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that they will assess and evaluate the situation on a day-to-day basis. So the fear is, while speaking to some Palestinians last night, they say that what if something happened? What if an attack like the one that took place in the northern part of the occupied West Bank happened here in occupied East Jerusalem? What would happen? Would Israel immediately impose new restrictions? So even though at this point officially no restrictions have been imposed, but many doubt that Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to follow through on his promise of no restrictions during the holy month of Ramadan, especially given the pressure coming on him from far-right ministers, even though the security apparatus, the defense minister, the army, have all called on Netanyahu not to impose any restrictions, Maria.
Mohammed, thank you so much. Mohammed Al-Qasim, thank you for those updates. Well, Dr. Yipenge is a family doctor who recently returned from a humanitarian